Thank you, thank you. So it's no, it's so you're in the only leftover Blockbuster store on the.
No, yeah, yeah. It was cheap to rent, so I rented it out from my my studio here.
Perfect, perfect.
Yeah. So this set this up just to basically, with video game movies getting so huge, you got Super Mario Brothers making $1 billion, and you being the king of video game adaptations. Just wanted to get a few minutes to chat with you about that and about your history with video game movies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
So, I guess first and foremost, I mean, we're seeing now with comic books and video game adaptations, people are starting to realize the worth of these types of media for stories, and it's just getting, especially in the video game world. I mean, the video games that are coming out now, like The Last of Us or something like God of War, are cinematic. You can't put it any other way. You started adapting video games way back in the early 2000s, and you kept with it for 12 years when a lot of people were saying you can't adapt video games, it's not worth it, and things like that. What was it that brought you to tell these stories on the big screen and to stick with it through all that time?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say I was a visionary or whatever, but it was really, I came out of my film Heart of America about school violence with Elizabeth Moss and so on. It's a good film, but it didn't make any money. It didn't sold properly. And then I got approached for House of the Dead. So Mindfire Entertainment, they had a script. They had the rights from Sega already. They had the script approved by Sega. And they said, look, if you want to do this as a producer, director kind of thing, we just cannot get the money together to do the film. And that made House of the Dead happen. And in a way, it was this kind of luck and curse at the same time, because then it started, everybody was bashing me, and it continued with Alone in the Dark and Blood Rain and so on. And on the other hand, it's exactly what you said, that these are properties, they are known in the whole world. So you don't have that problem of, for example, what I had with Heart of America, what was a very American film, to translate. Brazil, Korea, they all buy House of the Dead, but they don't buy Heart of America. So, and that was the reason I basically was riding then the wave on this kind of properties for a while. And this was basically the reason I did so many of them, because at that time also the video game companies were open and easy to make a deal with. You said, I want to do Alone in the Dark. I give you like $250,000 for the license, and they agreed to it. Now I assume a game costs millions as a fee to make a film out of it, right? So that changed. And also Far Cry, for example, the developers from Crytek, there are 3 Turkish brothers from Frankfurt. And I knew them before there were anybody, basically. And I bought Far Cry before it even came out. What the Ubisoft hated me for.
Yeah, I gotta imagine, because that got huge.
How could you give him so cheap the film rights and stuff like that? So it was a good time in a way to do this kind of films, and they were not like, because comic books were always there, and a comic book has kind of a storytelling to it, even if it's a comic book, but it's a story in it. And games are problematic. A lot of games don't really have a story. They have some characters, or they have some graphics what you can use, or weapons or whatever, but and then you put a story yourself together or with writers, and of course fans flipping out on you because they had a different film in their head.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's got to be, I'd imagine, the hardest part is we as fans, we don't know what we want, but we know it's not what we're given all the time. So when you get something like a video game, I got to imagine, in the early days with like Alone in the Dark and House of the Dead, where the studios involved as well, like trying to push a certain narrative or trying to, have final cut or anything like that, or were you kind of left to build the story yourself?
I mean, in a way I had final cut, but they were basically watching the rough cut. Lights get this in this the first two, and so that was and then they made me change stuff. You know, they said you need to get fast into the action or whatever. So they had some notes. Then we revised it. Then it was okay. But they never sent somebody to set or something. So I just had freedom to shoot basically whatever I wanted.
Right.
And yeah, and that was the good thing. But where we had massive problems was with Dungeon Siege, because my real Dungeon Siege film is 3 hours long, and they made me cut it down to 2 hours, and I think that hurt the film. You know, years later with Lord of the Rings and all that movies now are 2 hours 45 minutes, and even Harry Potter and everything. But at that time, they said, there was Fox at that point, and they said, no, we need 2 hours, and I said, yeah, but it's an epic. So and I said, I will destroy characters, I will destroy side plots who then don't make too much sense anymore. And but it came later. I don't even know if it's out in US, the long version. In Germany and Europe, it came out as a long version on Blu-ray and DVD at least.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not even sure if they released that in US. And I felt always that works way better, even if it has some boring parts in it, but the characters work better then.
Yeah, the whole thing is better. I never understood that, you know, and it's like, okay, if it happens the first time, the studios are learning, but it happens every single time they come in and mess with the project, especially when you're cutting it down by an hour or 45 minutes. If 10 minutes here and there, okay. But if you're cutting an hour, you're cutting major plot points out. You're cutting all the smoothness of the film and left with, you know, hopefully something that's watchable. You know, I can tell you the Dungeon Siege, I actually have a copy of it on Blu-ray, and I know mine, the one I have, doesn't have an extended version, so I'm going to start looking for that and see if I can get a non-region version sent over. So, and you know, specifically to Far Cry, I just have to take a time out to note 3 of my favorite actors to see in film: Til Schweiger, Emmanuel Vaugier, and Udo Kier. Just, I love those 3, and I know you've worked with Udo more than once, if I'm not mistaken.
I met Udo Kier. I shot in March in New York a film, First Shift, a police film, and I met him at the airport by accident. And he like,
oh really?
Yeah, and he said, I'm getting a lifetime. He was getting a lifetime achieving award, whatever, in Slovakia or something. And he was traveling in his older age now, but he's top fit. And he said, we need to work together again. And I said, yeah, I need the right scripts. I mean, Udo Kier is a special. I mean, I have it in Blood Rain, I have him in Far Cry. And I don't know, I think I have him in another film. I think I have him in 3 of my films he was in. But I mean, he's a pleasure to work with, but he's a special character, similar to Clint Howard. You cannot cast these guys for a normal guy or something.
No.
You need something special, you know? So, and then this kind of fantasy or action films, as the crazy scientists in Far Cry, that works very well. So
yeah, he just, I mean, he's got 273 film credits. I mean, that's just insane. The guy's prolific, to say the least. So with, you know, when with the video game adaptations you did, and we established that you had, you know, story reigned there. You could create the story to see how you see fit. And with the newer games coming out, there's so much of a story already there. Do you see yourself going back to that pool at any time? I feel like as a filmmaker, you might almost want to stray away from it, not just because of the fan reaction that's never going to be, you know, uniformly good because we don't know what we want, but also because you know, there's so much of the story there. You're almost just you're directing, but you're directing something that's already been written, already been told, and just adapting it directly, you know?
I had that. I remember I was actually in Seattle, a guy who worked at Microsoft, and we watched very early on stuff from Call of Duty. And I felt, what's the point now making a film where you have, I mean, the video game is kind of a film. There were like intros and animated video scenes, like stories of 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I mean, I said, what's the point now? Why you want
Right.
to do that? So you don't fill out anything anymore. You just copy. That is what I felt with Call of Duty. And
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say that The Last of Us, I think, was a masterpiece. I loved the film. I loved the TV series. Every single episode was special, was different. And that shows how far it can go with the right script, actors, team to make a great video game adaptation. You know, so and so I don't know. I mean, there will be more of these films, 100%. But there's also stuff where I think it's maybe better to not do the film about, you know,
Yeah.
or and to keep the mystery, or to keep this kind of, that is just the game, and play the game if you want it. What would be deadly is, I mean, what we have with comic book films now, I think we have this kind of overinflation that every side actor in a comic book is now getting a $500 million franchise. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's totally absurd in a way, you know. So I think also this kind of in earlier years, when The Dark Knight came with Heath Ledger or something, you had the feeling you watch a masterpiece and you were looking forward to see it for months in advance. Now you have every week another franchise starting, and you think, okay, I didn't even know that Black Adam existed before I saw it. You know, like, that is the thing. It's
There's nothing special about it anymore. It seems
no,
it's just
it's random, like yeah,
Friday.
yeah. And I feel, and it's kind of, I mean, if it's now with Super Mario, if it's just a change now that video game films getting also the attention what comic book films got in the past and now, then the quality will go up.
Yeah.
I mean, I spend on comic book films way more money as on video game adaptations.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even like you mentioned, The Last of Us, and even something like that's been, you know, critically and the fans have loved it. That it struck me as fun. I was a big fan of the game, and you're watching the show, and it is literally shot for shot the video game, like right down to where chairs are sitting in a scene. So I'm sitting like, what did the directors actually do on this, other than play the game and say, okay, yep, do that right, you know. But there's one.
They got good actors doing it, right? So I mean, but the cast, I think, was absolute excellent. And the good thing is that the series didn't need it, this kind of what the comic book films do. They just pay enormous amount of money to movie stars playing in all the Avengers and Thor and Hulk and Aquaman in that endless loop of stuff. And so here it was the B league actors, but they are actually better as the A league actors in their acting abilities, right? So, and that was refreshing, you know. And but I think Super Mario now, it's not a phenomenon that it's so successful because everybody knows the game, because there were other Super Mario films before. And you know, and everybody knows it since 30 years or whatever. I think it came out at the right time. It filled a hole for kids and parents, you know. So because there was right at that time, 4 weeks before, 4 weeks after, there was nothing where you could go with your kid in the movies, and I think that was the reason that it took so off.
Yeah, well, and it's bright and it's happy, and you know, that's something that's you know, really needed these days, especially.
Yes.
I'll tell you, you know, with if these video game movies do blow up and they do start making them, you know, I'll hope they don't just put them out like a factory. But there's one movie, or sorry, one game that's never been adapted. They did it animated, but it is just ripe for the picking, which is Castlevania. Have you heard of Castlevania? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, totally.
Simon Belmont, and he's got a whole family of vampire hunters and Dracula. And I hope they get around to doing that someday. You know, you should see if they have the licensing available, because that's one of those older games. You never know.
I had Fear Effect, and we couldn't get the movie together. I had Baldur's Gate. We couldn't get the movie together. And what is strange, right, with these big titles, but it didn't work out. And I tried with Fear Effect also at that point to get Hitman at that point,
Oh, okay.
because and then they sold it to the French company, because I had Jason Statham interested doing Hitman. So that was right after In the Name of the King, like Dungeon Siege. And so I think he would be sensational as Hitman.
Oh yeah,
And
he's the first person that would come to mind in Hollywood. You know, bald head and everything.
yeah, and I'm still kind of pissed that they made it like the film was not so bad they made, but it would be for sure bigger with the Jason Statham.
Yeah, it
would
wasn't
be-
bad, but it was generic, and that tends to be the problem with it sometimes. You can tell they didn't really care as much about it. They're not looking into the story. You know, you mentioned before you ventured into police movies, and you've got coming up another First Shift is your upcoming movie. New York City cops on their first day together as partners. Anything you can tell us about that? It sounds like, and is there anything you have to do differently making a cop movie these days?
I mean, it was basically a situation. I write a lot of times. I'm not a fast writer, so it's not like I'm sitting down and write like Taylor Sheridan. I don't get it how he can write all that TV shows alone or whatever. It's like Yellowstone,
Yeah.
and then Mayor of Kingstown, and I like that stuff. But I think like, how can he do this even? So it's for me. I'm way too slow for this, and so a lot of times I write ideas down, and I had 3 ideas for years, basically sitting there on a little file on my computers, and I felt like, but it's not a film, it's not enough. So I felt, okay, if I can have these episodes, like a mafia episode, then there was a guy where he gets a heart attack and his son is his dog is still in front of the supermarket when they transport him away. And then he's in the hospital and just like thinking about the dog the whole time, not about his own heart attack. And then there was a third thing where family, basically, where the father doesn't want that the wife leaves him and he kills the whole family. So, and I felt at one point in last December, so what I have to do is I need the surrounding rap. And then I felt, what is if it's a shift of police officers who work the first time together and they getting dragged into this dramas, into this story, and coming from basically situation to situation. And in this time period, they're also turning into friends. But in the beginning, they don't like each other, and then turning into friends. And I felt I like New York. It's an amazing location in general. And so that is how I wrote them very quickly, and went into casting and felt that could be a good film. I would watch a film like this. I like police films. And and with Kristen Renton, from Sons of Anarchy, and Gino Pesi from Shades of Blue, that they played the 2 cops. It worked very well. So it made me very happy that we got that film done. And we're in post-production right now. So yeah.
Any idea on a release date or around?
Yeah, I want to go in 1 or 2 film festivals before. I want to try to get a little theatrical release. So I don't want to be just on a streamer and gone forever after 10 days. So
yeah.
So I like to explore, to have like this kind of DVDs and the Blu-ray, and I still love this stuff, to do all the different distribution possibilities. And we shot it in CinemaScope to put it on screen. It looks very beautiful, and Ethan Manikis is cutting it. He did Sin City and From Dusk Till Dawn and Robert Rodriguez films. So he's happily cutting it in LA right now. So I mean, that is the thing. So it's I hope in fall, winter, we can get it out there.
And I'm glad to hear you say about streamers. I think we all fell in love with streaming when it first came out, but I'm starting to realize now, and I think a lot of people are starting to realize now, that it's just taken some of the magic away from so many films. We talked earlier about the comic book movies not being special because they're coming out every minute. And I distinctly remember movies coming out, looking forward, seeing the trailer, waiting 3 or 4 months to see it, not being able to see it again until it was on video. Though it was an 8-month process of loving this film, this project,
Yes.
whatever it was.
Yeah.
And now even the biggest movies, there was Project Adam, was a movie that came out last summer on Netflix with Ryan Reynolds, who's one of the biggest stars in the world at the moment. That movie came out, and literally by the next Tuesday, everybody had forgotten about it already. So I'm glad to see that you're still pushing for theatrical and everything like that.
No, and it's insane. We have now on Amazon like that Citadel or whatever the name is. I think they spent like 300 million on it. And then you start watching it on your TV and you think like, what's the point? I mean, that is just, it's not Mission Impossible. And it will never be like Mission Impossible or something. And I agree. And I like to see a making of. I like to have a director's commentary. People a lot of times love my commentaries because I'm like just blunt saying what happened, right? So I don't try to sugarcoat in the commentary, and then I try to make it real, that people feel that is how they did the film. And I think all of this is gone if you're just shown on a stream.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's something to it. You got the Blu-ray menu and the deleted scenes and all that. It's an event. It's a whole thing around it that you get to enjoy with the movie itself. So I know you're a busy man. I really appreciate the time you took here today and all your insight. It's been a pleasure. And we'll look for First Shift and keep our eyes on the festivals for when it's starting to hit.